You don't need a monster to die on Earth. Sometimes the monster is a mountain that looks peaceful for decades, until it decides it's time. Sometimes it's a city where the danger is silent, colorless, and already inside the walls. Sometimes it's a place so deceptively normal that the only warning you get is the moment your lungs stop doing what they've done your entire life. Tonight, we're not doing vague danger zones. We're going to real coordinates with real stories. Places that have already proven they can kill, and in some cases, do it without giving people a fair chance. This is inside Earth's most lethal locations. There's a kind of disaster that doesn't look like a disaster at first. On the night of November 13th, 1985, Colombia's Nevado del Ruiz erupted, and within hours, fast-moving volcanic mudflows, also called lahars, rushed down river valleys toward towns below. Earth magazine describes mudflows towering nearly 30 meters high, sweeping through the countryside and reaching Armero, where they killed more than 23,000 people in total. Prevention Web calls it Colombia's worst natural hazard-induced disaster, and describes it as the deadliest lahar ever recorded, noting lahars moving down the slopes after the eruption melted ice and snow. The Smithsonian's Global Volcanism Program report also describes the eruption melting ice and snow and generating lahars that killed more than 25,000 people. Here's why Armero belongs in a video about lethal locations. It wasn't just the eruption, it was what came after. Mud and debris behaving like a living thing, moving fast enough to erase entire neighborhoods before people understood what they were seeing. Earth magazine notes that at Armero, the lahars killed more than 20,000 of the town's 29,000 residents and left another 5,000 injured. It also emphasizes how quickly the mudflows followed the eruption, arriving in less than 3 hours after the eruption began. A lethal location isn't always the crater. Sometimes it's the valley that looks safe because it's green, flat, and home. If Armero is the horror of volcanic mud moving in darkness, the next location is a different nightmare. A city that lived for centuries under a volcano's shadow, and then watched the sky turn into ash. Mount Vesuvius rises above the Bay of Naples, and Britannica describes it as an active volcano with more than 2 million people living in the vicinity and on its lower slopes. Britannica notes that Vesuvius had been dormant for centuries before the Great Eruption of 79 CE buried Pompeii, Atlantis, and Stabiae under ash and lapilli, and buried Herculaneum under a mudflow. Britannica also notes that Pliny the Younger gave an account of the catastrophe in letters to Tacitus. The terrifying part of this location is not just that it erupted, it's that people had built normal life right up to the danger line. Vineyards, homes, roads, because the land is fertile and the mountain stays quiet until it doesn't. Britannica describes Vesuvius's slopes as covered with vineyards and orchards, and notes the soil is very fertile. That's the trap. The same geology that makes the area thrive is the geology that can end it. Now, let's jump to a volcano that doesn't just threaten nearby towns. This one has sent lava directly through a major city. In January 2002, Mount Nyiragongo erupted near Goma in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Smithsonian Global Volcanism Program report describes UN figures including 147 deaths, with 60 to 100 tied to an explosion at Goma's central petrol station on January 21st, and notes 14,000 homes destroyed and around 30,000 displaced. That same report notes that a health review later found no evidence for a large number of people injured or killed, showing that reported totals can vary depending on what is counted and verified. This is one of the most lethal location types on the planet, a rift setting where fractures can open and lava can travel along paths that intersect human infrastructure. One account describes the eruption as involving lava traveling toward Goma and causing extensive destruction, including parts of the city and airport. What makes Goma a lethal location isn't just the lava, it's the panic geometry. Roads bottleneck, darkness falls, and decisions happen with incomplete information. Next, we leave natural danger and enter human-made danger, one of the most infamous places on Earth where the air was fine right up until it wasn't. The Chernobyl disaster occurred on April 25th to 26th, 1986, at the Chernobyl nuclear power station, and Britannica calls it the worst disaster in the history of nuclear power generation. Britannica states the disaster occurred when technicians at Reactor Unit 4 attempted a poorly designed experiment and shut down power regulating and emergency safety systems, helping trigger an uncontrolled chain reaction and explosions. Britannica says that on April 27th, the 30,000 inhabitants of Pripyat began to be evacuated. A place becomes lethal in a special way when the danger is invisible, delayed, and persistent. Britannica states that between 50 and 185 million curies of radionuclides escaped into the atmosphere and spread widely, contaminating forests and farmland. Britannica explains that the Soviet Union created an exclusion zone with a radius of about 30 kilometers, covering 1,017 square miles, later expanding it to 1,600 square miles to include heavily radiated areas outside the initial zone. It also notes that scientists and others can file for permits to enter for limited amounts of time, and that parts of the zone were open to organize tours in 2011. What makes this location frightening isn't only the accident, it's what happened afterward. A human landscape turned into a controlled experiment in long-term hazard. Now for a place where the danger isn't radiation or lava or mud. It's fire. Fire that has been burning for decades, inside the earth. In the Karakum Desert of Turkmenistan, there's a burning crater commonly known as the Darvaza gas crater, often nicknamed the Door to Hell. Wikipedia describes it as a burning natural gas field collapsed into a cavern near Darvaza, and says the crater has been burning since 1971. Wikipedia also notes that early records are disputed and that some details may be absent, classified, or inaccessible, with different claims about when the collapse happened and when it was ignited. Discover Wildlife similarly notes the popular 1971 story, but emphasizes that Turkmenistan has no official record of the incident. This location is lethal for a simple reason. It's an open, burning gas crater in a desert environment where heat, fumes, and a fall can become catastrophic fast. And psychologically, it hits a deeper nerve. It looks like a hole in the world where the Earth forgot to put a lid. The next location is the opposite of Darvaza's bright flames. It's quiet, green, and deadly in a way that doesn't look deadly at all. In Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, there is a volcanic gorge often referred to as the Valley of Death, associated with deadly gas accumulations that can kill animals quickly. Atlas Obscura reports that rapid animal deaths there are likely due to carbon dioxide, an invisible volcanic gas that can kill in minutes at high enough concentrations. Airpano describes the area as a small basin near the Kikpanich volcano in the Kronotsky Reserve and says it is on the way of concentrated gas emissions that fill the basin with hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, and other poisonous fumes. The reason this place is so lethal is physics. Gases can pool in low areas, and if you enter at the wrong time, your body doesn't get a dramatic warning. Airpano also notes that the poisonous atmosphere can suppress bacterial activity, describing why bodies may not decay quickly in that setting. This is one of those locations where fresh air becomes a gamble. For the final location, we'll go somewhere that looks like a colorized alien planet. Except it's real Earth chemistry, and it doesn't care if you're impressed. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is widely described in popular geology sources as one of Earth's most extreme environments, known for intense heat and surreal mineral landscapes. Lists of bizarre geological features highlight the region's harshness and unusual terrain, emphasizing how hostile it can be for humans. This place is lethal less because of a single event, and more because the baseline conditions are punishing. Heat, isolation, and chemically harsh ground features that can injure you if you treat the landscape like a normal hike. If a disaster zone is dangerous because something happens, Danakil is dangerous because it's always happening. These are lethal locations with receipts. Armero proved that a volcano doesn't have to bury you in ash. It can send mud flows that erase a town in hours. Vesuvius proved that centuries of quiet can end in a day that becomes immortal for all the wrong reasons. Nyiragongo proved that lava can cut through a city's geometry and turn evacuation into chaos. Chernobyl proved that the most dangerous environments can be invisible and long-lived, reshaping a region into an exclusion zone. Darvaza proves that sometimes the Earth burns in one place long enough to become mythology, even when the historical details are still debated. Kamchatka's Valley of Death proves that the air itself can become a trap when volcanic gases pool at ground level. And Danakil proves that some places are hostile not because of violence, but because of chemistry and heat. That's the thing about Earth's most lethal locations. They don't need to hunt you. Gravity, chemistry, and bad timing do the job.